Senator Ron Johnson is on my phone, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. And the story today, I mean, we could have you on for the next, 2 months every single day, Senator. So let's sort of, compartmentalize what we're talking about here. The story today is the letter you sent as chairman of the committee to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. And as I'm reading the letter, I guess I was surprised at how much information he had provided just on social media. And I guess, was it publicly available until his accounts were shut down?
Well, yes, probably.
So if I went on his Facebook page, would I have been able to see him, talk about, the Islamic State? And I mean, was he being kind of obvious about it?
That I really can't tell you because I don't know what levels of Facebook in terms, because I know you got private sharing, you've got public sharing, so that I don't know yet. Basically, Vicki, we're sending out a number of oversight letters because what I have to do is I've got to do the Monday morning quarterback. I've got to do the second guessing. I realize that hindsight is best sight is 100% perfect, but those of us in these responsible positions, as Chairman of Homeland Security, Government Affairs, I'm sure Director Comey, I know Secretary Jay Johnson, everybody's combing through the information, trying to find out what was missed, what information we could have used, what should have we done, and that's really my purpose here with Facebook. We've certainly written letters to Loretta Lynch and to Secretary Jay Johnson and Director Comey, and we'll continue to write letters. We've got to get to the bottom of not only this, but we've got to accumulate all the information we've known, for example, from Fort Hood, Texas, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, or let's say the successful results where we foiled a plot against the Masonic Temple in Milwaukee. One of the things, that one's kind of off the radar screen, isn't it? Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We could have had an Orlando-sized slaughter at the Masonic Temple in Milwaukee, there for the grace of God, because we had good FBI work. Let's find out what worked there. I mean, in that case, it was an informant. The FBI, however they initiated that investigation, had informants, found out this guy was a terrorist. He didn't intend to do this, and so we foiled that plot. That didn't happen in this case. So let's put all that information together. Let's look at all these different instances, the successes, the failures, learn from them, and then change rules, procedures, law, so that we can try and prevent what is so difficult to prevent.
You're asking for 5 Facebook accounts. So apparently, he had 5 Facebook accounts, or whatever else was associated with his name. And this is, I find, very curious as well. You say, my staff has learned that Mateen apparently used Facebook to conduct frequent local law enforcement and FBI searches, including specific searches for specific law enforcement offices. Why? We don't know what was going on. Is there a way to piece this information together? You mentioned the Masonic Temple and how that plot was foiled. There were a couple of other plots that actually didn't go down the way the jihadists intended to. A couple of other actually gay nightclubs that were targeted. But my question is, after talking with Sheriff David Clark yesterday, and the use value of local law enforcement, which I know had to have played a role in assisting in developing information and intel on the Masonic Temple. How does the United States need to proceed in terms of information and counterintelligence? Because everybody has said this now umpteen times. The FBI is an investigative agency. They're not cut out to do counterintelligence. What they do well for the most part, but they're not really designed to be counterintelligence. Is there a way to have better solutions to the problem of lack of information at the ground level, even given that Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice seems to be hell-bent on making sure local law enforcement can't develop intel themselves?
Well, we have these things that have been developed since 9/11 called fusion centers or joint terrorism task force. And one of the sayings is when you've seen one fusion center, you've seen one fusion center. So everyone, it's a mixed bag, depends on leadership, but it really is that attempt to knock down the stovepipes, allow a free flow of information between the different law enforcement agencies. There's something called a SAR, Suspicious Activity Report. That's generally generated at a local level, and it goes up the chain. I think that the one complaint local officials have is they send the information up, they're not necessarily satisfied that they get enough of it back down. Sometimes that's for good reason. So it's never a perfect system. I think we're doing a far better job today than we certainly were 9/10/2001. But again, Vicki, this is so enormously difficult. What do you do with the not guilty yet while we make sure that we honor our constitutional rights? So I'm not saying this is easy, but it starts with an effective intelligence gathering capability. You have to be able to have things like roving wiretaps. You have to have lone wolf provisions so that we can have robust law enforcement techniques to use against people that aren't directly affiliated with some of these Islamic terror groups. So there are many pieces of this, and we need to be vigilant. And DHS is saying, if you see something, say something. It's far more than a slogan. It's vital.
But let me address that specifically. First, the fusion centers, because I've actually seen information that's non-classified information that's come through the fusion center. It's very general. There's no specific information that local law enforcement can really sink its teeth into. It doesn't provide actionable information that would say lead local law enforcement to develop a strategy to maybe watch someone. And then on the see something, say something. I'm saying, your comment, if you've seen one fusion center, you've seen one fusion center, or if you've seen one fusion center, you've seen them all. Because it's very, very generalized stuff. But then if you see something, say something. The people who worked with Omar Mateen didn't want to say anything. In fact, we're told by their boss, well, we can't really say anything because we might be accused of being Islamophobic. We might be accused of being racist. You go to the San Bernardino situation where people in the neighborhood noticed something was weird, noticed something was wrong. They were afraid to contact local law enforcement. Is local law enforcement, and I don't know the answer to this, does local law enforcement feel as well that if actually they do engage in some kind of operation that just is watching someone or developing intel, that they might be accused of some civil rights violation? I think of what happened to the New York City Police Department's database and the federal judge that said this is Islamophobic, and the Justice Department that did nothing to protect the information, or what the Justice Department did to DHS when they had developed their own database of information on radicalized mosques and people and how they were working on Facebook. Ron, I mean, sometimes you just got to wonder if some of this is already, it's already able to be done, but fear prevents people from actually engaging in what would be really, really good counter intel.
So hopefully every one of these tragedies results in a changing attitude where people do see something if they say something. They're not going to be intimidated by some of these cultural issues that have prevented them in the past. But also, I would say we have to keep our focus on what the root cause of the problem is. It's Islamic terrorism. It's Islamic terror. It's not gun control. It's Islamic terrorism. And it's accomplishing the goal that President Obama set out 22 months ago, defeating ISIS. We actually have to defeat this, and we've got to have a long-term, tenacious, relentless commitment on the part of the civilized world to not only defeat ISIS, but find, hunt down, and destroy Islamic terrorists wherever they reside on this planet. We have got to stamp this out both militarily, but also from an ideology standpoint. The world of Islam has to police itself. It also has to denounce and renounce this type of violence as well. So this is a long.
We don't demand that.
There's nothing easy about this, but we have to speak honestly about what the real threat is. And again, it's not gun control; it's Islamic terror.
Let me go back to saying you're exactly right. But we have a Homeland Security director who says that conservative right-wing extremists are just as dangerous. Doesn't want to use words like jihad or Sharia or caliphate. Now remember, ISIS yesterday announces that Omar Mateen is a lion of the caliphate, but we're not supposed to even understand what that's supposed to mean. We're not supposed to use that language. Again, I go back to the Department of Justice, destroying a database created that was, I think, 12 years in the creation it took to create this very meat-filled database of Islamofascism. They ordered that destroyed. We had a federal judge tell the New York City Police Department they couldn't keep maintaining their information that they had been developing over years since 9/11. Fusion centers that aren't providing names, details, what has been going on. Here's what we saw on this guy's Facebook page. That's not flowing to local law enforcement. And then you've got people who are afraid to speak out. So that tells me that in the last, 12 years, 14 years, we've done everything the exact opposite of what you say is going to work to solve this problem.
Well, Vicki, that's why I view myself as the watchdog over the watchdog here. And that's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to assemble this information. I'm trying to make it public so that we can change the attitude, so we can actually start doing what works, so we concentrate on the main problem here as combating Islamic terror. But I will say, we should positively engage every Muslim community. We need to make sure that any immigrant that comes to this nation assimilates, becomes part of our culture, doesn't feel alienated, so there's less chance that they self-radicalize. I mean, those are good goals on the part of this administration. I don't disagree with those things, but you gotta call the enemy the enemy. You got to describe as evil what is evil, and you got to understand that what we are dealing with here. I mean, think of all of our freedoms that have been reduced because of Islamic terror. Look at what we have to go through to get on an airplane. How much we spent $95 billion on TSA. I mean, that's in the scheme of things a minor cost. It's $95 billion, and we have to go through all this hassle to get on an airplane because of Islamic terrorists. So people need to understand, and we have to quit distracting the American public with these nonsense debates, and that's what they are, these nonsense debates about gun control. Proposing peaceful legislation that will have no effect on these tragedies. I mean, that's the hurdle that these gun control advocates always have never succeeded in surmounting. Is how is their proposal actually going to solve these problems? How are they going to prevent these tragedies? And that's, of course, we're debating this on the United States Senate here today as we speak. Laws that won't actually prevent these things.
Yeah, and you guys are going to be turned into the bad guys for failure to do things that won't have any effect.
Protecting constitutional rights.
You know and I know that this is about the politics, that the Democrats are interested in the politics, because it's bad politics to say, oops, on our watch, all of these things have happened. So let's distract and let's talk about everything else. Although I do believe that progressives honestly believe that, I guess if we completely, sacrifice our rights as U.S. citizens, that somehow we're going to be doing the world a favor. But most people don't agree with that. Back to Facebook for a second. What are you hoping to get from Facebook? Or anybody else that were, any other social media outlet where he posted information? Are you just trying to get details? Are you asking for assistance? Are you looking for a partner? What are you trying to get out of this? Or are you just at this point in a fact-finding mission?
All the above. It's trying to assemble the facts and then put those together with other instances so we can take a look at this. I mean, just what you're saying. Why are we taking down these databases? Why are we, in many respects, not taking this seriously enough? So you got to lay out the information. Vicki, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out what I don't know and what the American public doesn't know, and try and get by the demagoguery, try and get by the distractions of the nonsense debates, and start looking at the root cause of problems so we can address that so that our freedoms can be restored. Okay, that is going to probably take a generational struggle, but man, I'm all about individual liberty, civil liberties, and freedom. And as long as Islamic terror continues to grow, and it's growing in this world, it's not going away. It's not on the run. It's growing. It's metastasizing. It's evolving. It's becoming more dangerous.
I so many questions to ask. What of reform-minded Muslims who desperately don't want to have to, constantly be silenced because of the radicals, because the radical imam, like the one in Orlando, who said, the right punishment for homosexuality is death. By not calling that out, the extremism out, you've silenced the voices of the reformers in the faith. You've made it difficult to make partners with people you're talking about here. Not to mention everything that we have done that has failed, we're not getting rid of it. Where we just continue to pile on and pile on. I don't know how to motivate it back into the world that works, Ron, but I remember not too long ago, it worked better than it did now.
Well, it's an informed public, Vicki. I mean, it's information. You actually have to have the facts. You have to look at this. You have to face the harsh reality, and you have to deal with reality, and you have to do it with facts. And so we have to engage the moderate Muslims that are willing to push back on this and renounce and denounce this type of ideology, this kind of violence. We need to engage those people. Let's not alienate them. Let's engage them. Let's work with them as partners. They got to step forward. We got to be welcoming to them.
Good to have you on the program. Thanks for jumping on the show today, Senator Ron Johnson.